what is your niche and how can you advertise to the problem of that niche inclusively with the people that you want. You may not want to see men, for example, or you may not want to see women. For example, your niche may be men, in which case you will have pictures of men leaning over, holding their back with a clear grimace on their face from pain. If you're seeing women, be a woman leaning over, grimace on the face, etc.
Mentoring with Geraldine is a bite-sized practitioner podcast for naturopaths, nutritionists, herbalists, coaches, and practitioners. This podcast responds directly to the needs of you, the practicing natural therapist. We have interviews during the holiday season and business and mindset support each week, so you'll get the variety you need to enjoy and stay motivated in your practice. Don't forget to subscribe to receive the weekly episodes. And if you want to connect with me, always check the show notes because that's where you'll find the links to book appointments and, of course, to join the Academy, the membership group where there's constant connection and community with like-minded practitioners. Now, let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to Mentoring with Geraldine and the Bite Size Podcast. How the devil are you? What's happening with you? How are things going? Last week, we talked about delivering exceptional client experiences and what it's like for them, the experience from the very start all the way through to when they've seen you and before the follow-up. And then in that, towards the end, I suddenly thought we need to talk about the problems and the client problem and why we're delivering to the problem. So if you're in the Academy or if you're in any of my groups, then you've probably heard me talking about the problem the client suffers from and advertising to the problem, because they don't necessarily have a diagnosis. They know that they go to the toilet too many times a day. And IBS is a pretty big confounding answer. Something arthritis, big words for I've got osteoarthritis, I've got rheumatoid arthritis. These are big, all-encompassing problems, and these are problems that we see on a regular basis because the person is finally in too much pain, and so they're looking for alternatives to the over-the-counter pain meds that they've been offered, or they're in pain, they've been offered much stronger pain control by the pain team or the GP or whomever, but they realize they can't function using that product, and so they want something different. So those people already have a problem, and so they know what their problem is. They know their problem is pain. They know their problem is acne. They know their problem is IBS. So you need to be advertising to the problem so that when they look it up, they're finding you under painful joints. They're not finding you under arthritis, because although they have that descriptor, that's not what they necessarily will be looking up. Whereas acne is acne. It only has one word, pimples, acne. There's not a lot of other words for it. And the problem itself is very visible. Whereas your arthritis person, the problem might be mobility. The problem might be pain. So we've got to think about the problem for our niche clients, and then we advertise to the problem, not the diagnosis. Yes, we can mention the diagnosis. Absolutely. And then you might choose within your visuals. So think of a visual for pain. It's a person leaning over, hand on their back, and lots of sort of arrows pointing at their back and then leaning forward, and then a painful look on their face. They've got a bad back. So that's the visual. So these are the visuals we're looking for. Whereas an arthritis person, you might show a twisted hand, but that would mean that only people with a twisted hand would come to see you, because that's what you've advertised to. Because people need to see themselves in the visual. They need to see themselves in your advertising. I made this mistake, right? Here's my mistake. Quite a while ago now, about 5 years ago, I got a new VA. I hadn't had a VA before, and she was creating visuals for me. She was creating pictures for my social media. And as you may or may not know, I have a training pediatric online mastery course, and you work through it yourself and you get a one-to-one with me as part of it so that I can answer any questions halfway through. Now, I was advertising that for the first time. I had a summit and things like that. And so she produced a lot of pictures of babies, right? A lot of pictures of babies. And then my sister pointed out to me that she was only producing pictures of white babies because that was her assumption of what I would want. And my younger sister was like, where are the brown babies? Where are other babies? Where are even the twins? Where is everything else? All you've got is white babies. So when I had a second look at everything, I was like, oh yeah, I haven't even got any kids in here. I've got white Anglo-Saxon babies are all she's produced. I mean, she'd only produced a dozen pictures. It wasn't like she'd produced hundreds of thousands. It was just the pictures that were being used were the same generic, very generic baby. So why would anybody who perhaps has an Asian child come to see me? They'd think, well, she doesn't know anything about my children because she's only seeing white babies. Whereas, of course, I'm not. I've seen all variations of shapes, sizes, colours, everything across the board when I was seeing lots of children and lots of babies. And, it's one of those things that we have to be careful of because we have to see ourselves in someone's advertising, which means our advertising needs to be really inclusive of everyone. So if it's pain, then it needs to be your audience. So it might be women who suffer from pain aged 35 to 65, which means that you need all of the types of women in there who are suffering from pain, showing those excruciating look on the face, holding the limb, as we see in visuals for pain, and that's going to align with us for pain. One of the most obvious visuals is the white woman wearing a turban. Immediately, that says to you, she has cancer, probably breast cancer. So now the visuals, we are seeing more of other races of women wearing a turban, which says to everyone, this person has cancer because they're undergoing chemo and they lost their hair. So this is a visual that we all see, we all feel, we all know immediately what.
Thanks so much for joining me today. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast for the weekly episodes. If you'd like even more support and learning, then the Academy is for you. Here you'll find part 2 of the herbal discussions, more clinical learning, and case studies to support your clients in practice. Bye for now.